What's up, Taiwan? I'm Erika Liu with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. A former top Pentagon official has voiced support for the goal of raising Taiwan's defense spending to 5% of GDP.
Increasing those numbers up to 5% is really important and will be a really major step in terms of strengthening Taiwan's defense and resilience. So I think that's an appropriate target over the next several years.
Eli Ratner served as Assistant Secretary of Defense for Indo-Pacific Affairs under the Biden administration. He says developing a defense industrial base in Taiwan, as well as further military training and planning, are just as important as expanding the budget. Taiwan President Lai Ching-te has said that Taiwan will aim to spend 3% of GDP on defense next year and 5% by the end of the decade. Other U.S. officials have suggested Taiwan's military spending should be as high as 10% of GDP as it continues to face threats of invasion from China. Nearly 5 decades ago, the U.S. Congress passed the Taiwan Relations Act, which governs the unofficial ties between Taipei and Washington. Many of the law's guarantees were based on recommendations made by the American Chamber of Commerce in Taiwan, then headed by Robert Parker. TaiwanPlus recently spoke to Parker about his experience and his new book, De-Recognition, for our news show, Zoom In, Zoom Out.
You went to Washington to testify in front of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Can you talk a little bit about what your demands were?
Yes, we had to first deal with the omnibus bill and attack it, show why it was deficient, and then take the positive side and make the proposals for what we felt was needed in the legislation.
So how receptive was the Foreign Relations Committee to the demands that you brought them?
They were very receptive. They needed to know what they wanted to respond strongly, but how to respond and what the terms should be. So when the testimony was given, it turned out that the other witnesses largely concentrated on geopolitical factors, philosophical approaches, historical analogies and the like. And it was us, the American Chamber of Commerce in Taiwan, that focused on the practical and legal issues that would apply. The existence of diplomatic relations with a friendly country under U.S. law carried with it many legal consequences under American law. And it was unprecedented for the United States to break diplomatic relations with a friendly country. In the past, we'd only done that with enemy countries. And suddenly to have all of those things that flowed automatically under U.S. law from the existence of formal diplomatic relations with a friendly country had been swept away. And so in my research for my testimony, I focused on those legal consequences of the existence of official diplomatic relations and the essence of recognizing sovereignty under U.S. law, and wove that into the recommendations that I made, to which the Senate Foreign Relations Committee was very receptive.
And how many of those asks ended up in the final piece of legislation?
Well, it wasn't 100%, but it was close. I'd say 80%.
And among that 80%, what do you think was the most important?
If I had to single out one, it would be that the omnibus bill proposed by the administration did not deal with the fact that Taiwan had a government. They simply referred to the people on Taiwan.
Yeah, very interesting legalese.
Yeah. And so insisting that there had to be a definition in the Taiwan Relations Act that linked that to the government on Taiwan, I think was the most important. And Congress agreed. So that was done. But there were also a wide number of very important issues that had simply been left out of the administration's proposal. For example, what about all of the existing treaties and agreements between the United States and the ROC? Well, Jimmy Carter had said they'll continue in effect, but their proposed legislation didn't say that. So I insisted that that had to be addressed, and Congress agreed and wrote that into the Taiwan Relations Act.
That was former AmCham Taiwan President Robert Parker. Hong Kong has entered a 3-day period of mourning as the death toll from the city's worst fire in decades rises to 128. Officials warn the number may increase.
So as of 3 p.m. today, we got 128 deceased persons confirmed case. We expected that when our DVIU officers entered other buildings, the number of death toll may be on the rise.
That grim prediction comes as police revised the number of missing down to 150. The blaze broke out Wednesday at an apartment complex in the city's northern district of Tai Po, rapidly engulfing buildings covered with scaffolding for renovations. Authorities have now arrested 14 people in an investigation into possible corruption and use of unsafe materials. On Sunday, city officials bowed and lowered flags to half-mast to mark the beginning of the mourning period. Meanwhile, residents are laying flowers at a makeshift memorial, questioning how such a disaster could occur.
My mood is not good. Normally, this should not happen in Hong Kong in 2025 if all standards were being met.
Police say combing through the hazardous site for remains could take weeks. Over 500 people are reported dead and hundreds are still missing in Southeast Asia after heavy rain slammed the area, causing the worst flooding in the region in decades. As of Saturday, Indonesia has reported at least 300 casualties, while Thailand and Malaysia have also confirmed rising death tolls as search and rescue efforts continue. Experts say the disaster may be linked to the region's annual monsoon season, which usually takes place between June and September. But with the impact of climate change, the season's duration and intensity have increased, bringing heavier rainfall, more severe flooding, and stronger winds. Thailand's Maniq people are demanding the right to harvest the forest they've long lived in. Their struggle reflects the challenges faced by many indigenous groups in the region. Zalan Shatta reports.
In the forests of Thailand, an indigenous Maniq hunter stalks a monkey. As a member of one of the country's last hunter-gatherer groups, he's carrying on a centuries-old tradition, one that faces an uncertain future. Like many indigenous communities around the world, the Maniq face change. The Thai government made their forests a conservation zone, and laws now limit private land ownership and make hunting illegal. As Thailand develops, the Maniq people must increasingly choose between their traditional nomadic lifestyle and a modern one with access to education and healthcare.
Having a house is important because a structure like this breaks down easily, so we can't live in it for long. I want a house or a hut that I could occupy for a long time.
For centuries, the Maniq have roamed the Malay Peninsula, moving with the seasons and searching for food. Today, most of their community has moved to the edges of forests, closer to mainstream Thai society.
For the Maniq people, we've entered a transitional stage. We're transitioning from the traditional Maniq who live off the forest to now we're not like that. We're living a new way of life. We send our kids to school and expenses follow. So we want land where we can make a living out of it.
Maniq hunting has transitioned from a main food source to an important cultural practice. And while studies suggest it is sustainable and helps biodiversity, it's now barred by environmental protection laws.
It's not just the Maniq people. Everybody needs to abide by the law equally. Everyone needs to adhere to the 2019 Wildlife Conservation and Protection Act within the wildlife conservation area, which doesn't permit collecting forest resources, hunting, or encroaching an area where one doesn't have an ownership of.
There are loopholes. Indigenous communities in Thailand can receive 20-year permits to use and harvest the land they live on. While some argue this makes them temporary residents on their own land, others see it as a reasonable compromise.
They may not get ownership of a land, but they will get rights to utilize the land. which will also apply to their descendants. They can use it according to their traditional way of life, and at the same time, they'll help preserve the land. This way, they can live inside the conservation area. This is the way out. Giving them ownership of a plot of land is not the solution.
The debate over the rights of small indigenous groups to harvest their land is part of a much larger debate over indigenous rights happening in the region. In Indonesia, mining is polluting the Hangana Manyawas rivers. And in Taiwan, widely popular laws on gun ownership, conservation, and animal rights conflict with laws protecting traditional indigenous ways of life. And while the issue is a global one, for those it affects, it's deeply personal.
I want to continue living in the forest, but I've already come down to study and I have to move forward. I want my mom to be happy. I want her to have income.
As Duan and others in her community transition to a different way of life, they join indigenous groups all over the world, navigating changes brought on by a distant central government, even as they navigate the land they once called home. Howard Tang and Zalan Shata for TaiwanPlus.
A major access road crossing the Mataian River in Hualien has officially resumed operations after being washed out by tropical storm Feng Wang in November. Excited residents lit firecrackers to welcome the reopening.
很高兴路通了，很大我们要去看病拿药都不方便。
The road became impassable after a nearby natural dam overflowed. It was the second time the road was damaged by flash flooding this year. The Highway Bureau says it added temporary steel bridges to the route to help reduce flood risk. The Water Resources Agency has also begun work on reinforcing the Mataian's levees to stabilize the riverbanks and protect nearby communities.
目前整个临时堤防已经有构筑600公尺。 把原来溢流的那一段全面加高5到10公尺，好，那而且有加这个顶块跟混凝土的一个保护工。这个下游的河段，目前跟河道的相差也不到1公尺。
Authorities say work on these projects is expected to be completed within a month. Tens of thousands of people filled the streets of Kaohsiung in southern Taiwan on Saturday to advocate for LGBTQ+ rights. Our reporter Sanny Chi has the story.
Marching for a more equal society. That was the main message at the 16th Kaohsiung Pride Parade, which took place on Saturday in southern Taiwan. Tens of thousands of people joined the annual event, with many expressing hope for a better future for Taiwan's LGBTQ+ community.
讲求就是平等嘛，不管是男女平等也好，性别平等也好，就是讲求世界一个平等和平这样而已。
让更多人知道我们有就是权利，我们都喜欢每个人都有每个人的权利。
For the first time, the parade took place in Kaohsiung City's Fengshan district. Its theme, Voting with Pride, focused on next year's local elections. Blending themes of pride, rainbows, and voting, organizers say they hope candidates can listen to the voices of diverse communities and ensure that gender equality is no longer overlooked.
包括建立性别友善校园啊，然后性别友善职场啊，以及性别友善的医疗环境，还有性别友善观光，跟建立性别友善厕所，以及我们希望能够弭平性别资源的城乡差距。
Taiwan became the first country to legalize same-sex marriage in Asia in 2019. But issues of resource access and discrimination still affect Taiwan's LGBTQ+ community. And organizers say, while progress has been made, the road to full equality is still long. John Su and Sanny Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we take you to Libya for its traditional equestrian festival. I'm Erika Liu. Take care and see you next time.